He slid the envelope across the table like it was a death sentence wrapped in 20 pounds ivory linen. He pushed the envelope toward me on the table, and it felt as ominous as a fatal verdict sealed in expensive paper. No name. Just typed bold, all caps at the top like a corporate mugshot. The document lacked a name, but it's stark, bold, all capitalized, heading made. It looked as menacing as a corporate criminal's booking photo. Restructure memo effective immediately. The memo announced corporate restructuring that was to begin right away. His cufflinks caught the light as he leaned back, smirking the way only a man who's never been told no by someone who didn't depend on him for insurance could smirk. The light glinted off his cufflinks as he leaned back and grinned with the self-confidence of someone who has never faced genuine opposition. Langston didn't speak yet. Langston remained silent. He didn't have to. There was no need for him to say anything. The silence dared me. His silence challenged me. Opened it. I opened the envelope. It wasn't even subtle. The message inside was blunt and direct. My title, Director of Strategic Growth, gone folded into Sales Operations. Support. No team. No accounts. No equity pipeline access. And right at the bottom, buried between boilerplate HR sludge and ACC to legal role, realigned to better reflect core. My title as Director of Strategic Growth had been eliminated, replaced with a subordinate role in Sales Operations Support, with no team, accounts, or access to equity, and at the bottom, hidden within standard HR and legal jargon, it stated my role was realigned to better reflect core competencies. Note, female staff statistically underperform in high-value negotiations. A note at the bottom stated that women on staff, according to statistics, are less effective in high-stakes negotiations. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. I held my breath and didn't move a muscle. Brain was already filing this moment under fuel. My mind was already storing this experience as motivation. Then I looked up and the bastard winked. When I finally looked up, he gave me a condescending wink. Nothing personal, Michelle. It's data, he said. Don't take it personally, Michelle, he said. It's based on data. Women just don't close. He added that women simply don't have what it takes to close deals. I smiled. Not with my mouth, with my teeth. I forced a smile that showed my teeth rather than genuine amusement. Thanks for the insight. I'll be sure to support our core competencies starting now. I thanked him for his perspective and said I'd begin supporting our core competencies immediately. I walked out of that glass aquarium of an office like I was made of rebar and caffeine, and didn't stop until I hit the parking garage. I got up, left his glass-walled office, feeling as unshakable as steel and as wired as if I were on a caffeine binge, and didn't stop until I reached the parking garage. That's when I screamed one quick sound into the cement silence. It was there, in the quiet, concrete space, that I let out a single, quick scream. Then I exhaled and dialed Danny Patel after that. I let out a breath and called Danny Patel. She picked up on the third ring. She answered after the phone rang 3 times. Her voice was honey poured over a bus. Her voice was a striking combination of sweetness and sharpness. I'm in, I said. I'm in, I told her. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to ask what had occurred. She already knew. She already had a feeling. Danny always knew. Danny always had an uncanny sense of things that women like us didn't need backstory. We, as women, understood each other without needing detailed explanations. We traded in scars and receipts. Our conversations were based on shared experiences of struggle and the evidence of our accomplishments. You still want rap? She asked. Do you still want rap? She inquired. I want the contract on my desk before Langston's next performance review. I told her I wanted the contract for the company on my desk before Langston's next performance evaluation. She laughed. Short, sharp, she let out a quick, pointed laugh. Then bring your again. Was my boards in blood mode? Then you'd better bring your A game, she said, adding that my boards were ready to go. Perfect. So was I perfect, I replied. I am too. By Monday morning, I was still officially sales ops support, a glorified assistant with a cubicle next to the copier and a broken desk chair that listed, right? Like it was giving up on hope. On Monday morning, my official title remained sales ops support, a fancier way of saying I was an assistant with a desk by the copier and a broken chair that leaned to the side as if it had lost all will. But by night, I was a damn ghost, moving through back channels, running call sheets, pulling financials on Ravix like I was laundering money through spreadsheets. By nightfall, however, I was operating like a phantom, working covertly to organize calls and analyze Revix's finances as if I were illegally cleaning money. I knew Langston would tank this deal if he caught wind. I was certain Langston would deliberately sabotage the deal if he found out about it. Ravix wasn't just biotech. Ravix was more than just a biotechnology company. It was scandal, marinated chaos. It was a mess, steeped in scandal. Their CEO had been photographed last quarter at a casino in Macau with someone's wife and someone else's money. Their CEO had recently been photographed at a casino in Macau with another man's wife and a significant amount of someone else's money. Their labs were under FDA scrutiny. Their laboratories were being investigated by the FDA. But the molecule RX-47, that was gold, uncut, unstable, and months from a phase 3 breakthrough. However, the RX-47 molecule was a priceless, raw, and volatile substance on the verge of a major breakthrough in phase 3 trials. It wasn't a clean acquisition, but it was a kingmaker, which meant Langston would rather torch it than let a woman nail it to the boardroom wall. The acquisition wouldn't be simple, but it was a potential game, and Langston would rather destroy it than let a woman succeed with it. So I got creative. So I began to think outside the box. I used a burner phone and logged calls through a fake extension. I used a temporary phone and routed calls through a non-existent extension. Booked meeting rooms under canceled calendar holds. I reserved conference rooms under previously canceled appointments. Slept under my desk one night with a blanket I stole from facilities. I even spent a night sleeping under my desk, using a blanket I'd taken from the facilities department. I met Danny twice at an underground bar near the Wharf, where NDAs were signed on cocktail napkins and everyone drank gin like it was church wine. I met with Danny 2 times at a discreet bar by the Wharf, where we signed non-disclosure agreements on cocktail napkins and everyone drank gin with an almost ritualistic reverence. Meanwhile, Langston was too busy plotting. some marketing conference golf junket to notice the wires being stitched through his own ceiling. At the same time, Langston was too preoccupied with planning a lavish golf trip for a marketing conference to realize I was working behind the scenes to undermine him. But then on a Wednesday that felt like a trap, my name popped up on the internal call sheet. Then, on a Wednesday that felt like a setup, my name appeared on the company's internal call list. Langston, 9 a.m. status check. The call was a 9 a.m. status check with Langston. He never did those. He never held such meetings. That's when I knew he smelled smoke and he was about to light the match himself. At that moment, I realized he suspected something was up and was about to take action himself. Langston's office smelled like desperation in a bottle on Ford cologne, barely masking the scent of scorched ambition. Langston's office had a faint smell of a desperate man, with the scent of his cologne barely covering up the aroma of his burning ambition. He didn't offer me a seat. He didn't invite me to sit down. Classic move. It was a typical power play. Keep the prey standing, make him squirm. The goal was to keep me on my feet and make me uncomfortable, but I didn't flinch. But I didn't show any fear. My spine was straight steel in spite. My posture was rigidly defiant. I smiled like I'd just eaten his 401k. I smiled with the satisfied look of someone who had just taken all of his retirement savings. He laced his fingers, elbows resting on the desk like a judge, ready to hand down a sentence he was going to enjoy. He intertwined his fingers and rested his elbows on the desk, looking like a judge who was about to deliver a verdict he'd take pleasure in. So, he said, drawing the word out like a blood-littling. So, he said, drawing the word out slowly, I've heard some whispers. I've been hearing some rumors. Double quotes. Oh, I blinked. Oh, innocence and vanilla? I asked, feigning complete innocence. About what? About what? His lips curled. Not quite a smile, more like a dog baring teeth. His lips twisted in a way that was less a smile and more a sneer. About your extracurriculars, after hours, meetings, unauthorized contact with Ravik stakeholders. About your activities outside of work, your meetings after hours, and your unauthorized communication with people at Ravik. Rumor is you've been freelancing a little too close to executive turf. I hear you've been operating a little too close to the executive level. I let a pause stretch long and awkward. I allowed a prolonged and uncomfortable silence to hang in the air. His jaw clenched so hard I could hear the enamel grinding. His jaw was so tightly clenched I could hear his teeth grinding. The veins in his forehead did that thing they always did when a woman outsmarted him. Twitched like bad wiring behind drywall. The veins in his forehead throbbed the way they always did when a woman outsmarted him, like faulty wires beneath a wall. I let the silence hang like a noose. I allowed the silence to linger, making it feel like a noose. Then I leaned in just close enough for him to smell the victory on my breath. Then I leaned in close enough for him to sense my triumph. You know what's wild? I whispered. You could have taken credit. You know what's crazy? I whispered. You could have taken all the credit. Could have played it cool. Smiled for the cameras and let the board think you masterminded the whole damn thing. You could have acted cool, smiled for the cameras, and let the board believe you were the mastermind behind the entire thing. But you wanted to crush me so bad you didn't even stop to read. But you wanted to destroy me so badly that you didn't even bother to read what you were signing. He stood suddenly, knocking his chair back. He abruptly stood up, knocking his chair over. You manipulated this charade. You manipulated this whole thing. He said, Dot, this is fraud, misrepresentation. This is fraud and misrepresentation. I'll bury you. I'm going to bury you. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. You're welcome to try. You're welcome to try. Assistant was still frozen at the door, clutching her tablet like it could shield her from what was happening. The assistant was still frozen at the doorway, holding her tablet as if it could protect her from the unfolding scene. I met her eyes. Tell the board I'm available for questions at 400 p.m. and let Danny know I'll be joining the transition call in 30. I looked her in the eyes and said, tell the board I'm available to answer questions at 4 p.m. and let Danny know I'll be on the Ravik transition call in 30 minutes. The assistant nodded slowly, then disappeared like smoke. The assistant slowly nodded, then quickly and silently left. Langston stormed out a second later, but not before grabbing the signed contract off the table, like maybe if he shredded it fast enough could turn back time. A second later, Langston stormed out, but not before snatching the signed contract from the table, as if destroying it could somehow undo what had been done. I let him take it. I let him take the document. I had 20 PDF copies, cloud backups, a flash drive in my purse, and one laminated printout already in the hands of the legal team. I had 20 PDF copies, cloud backups, a flash drive in my bag, and a laminated printout that was already with the legal team. Let him burn the paper. It was just for drama now. I didn't care if he burned the paper. At this point, it was just for show. I walked back to my desk with the quiet swagger of a sniper who knows the shot's already landed. I walked back to my desk with the calm confidence of a sniper who knows the target has already been hit. But as I sat down, something prickled. But as I sat down, I felt a strange sense of unease, a hunch. I had a feeling, a cold note sliding down my spine like a razor, wrapped in silk. It was a chilling sensation, like a razor blade sliding down my spine, but it was smooth. Langston wasn't the type to go down easy. I knew Langston wouldn't give up without a fight, and sure enough, 7 minutes later, an email from HR popped up. As expected, 7 minutes later, an email from HR appeared in my inbox. Subject line, urgent suspension notice. The subject line was urgent suspension notice. I clicked it, skimmed, scoffed. I opened it, read it quickly, and scoffed. They were investigating unauthorized use of internal systems, breach of chain of command protocol, and deliberate circumvention of executive oversight. The email stated they were investigating me for unauthorized use of internal systems, violating chain of command protocol, and deliberately bypassing executive supervision. My keycard was disabled, my email locked, my security badge was deactivated, and my email account was locked. They even froze my health insurance. They even went so far as to freeze my health insurance. Classy. How classy? I thought sarcastically. I sat back in my chair and laughed aloud. Like a lunatic. I leaned back in my chair and laughed out loud like a crazy person. He was pulling the plug on my existence. He was trying to erase my professional life, I texted Danny one word, retaliation. I texted Danny a single word, retaliation. She called immediately. She called me right away. "You're locked out?" she asked, voice already sharp with fire. "Are you locked out?" she asked, her voice already filled with a fierce determination. HR suspension. I said, "HR suspended me?" I said, sabotage. He's trying to sabotage me from the inside. He's trying to cover his ass. He's trying to cover his own mistakes. Danny exhaled. He just declared war on the wrong species. Danny exhaled. He just declared war on the wrong kind of people. She said, within 50 minutes, she'd activated Ravik's legal team, one of the nastiest corporate law firms on the West Coast, sent an official letter to our board citing breach of acquisition contract terms and retaliation against a key strategic stakeholder. Within 50 minutes, she had activated Ravik's legal team, a powerful corporate law firm, to send an official letter to our company's board, accusing them of breaching the acquisition contract and retaliating against a key strategic individual that got their attention. And then came the real grenade. And then she dropped the real bomb. Danny forwarded a little gift, a memo Langston had sent 6 months ago, internal only, complaining that female hires are inflationary dead weight and requesting a budget freeze on diversity hires not tied to compliance. Danny sent me a memo Langston had sent 6 months ago, intended for internal eyes only, in which he complained that hiring women was a financial burden and requested a freeze on the budget for hires not required for compliance. It had been buried in a shared drive no one used anymore. The memo was hidden in a shared drive that was no longer in use, except I had used it. I forwarded that to the board. I sent a copy of the memo to the board. Then I called the press. Then I contacted the media. Langston wanted scorched earth. Langston wanted to burn everything down. I brought gasoline. I brought the means to do it. By the time the clock hit for 12 p.m., my story was trending on LinkedIn by 4:12 p.m. My story was a trending topic on LinkedIn. Half the sales team had walked out in protests, and the chairman of the board was calling an emergency session. Half of the sales team had walked out in protest, and the chairman of the board was calling an emergency meeting. Langston had tried to erase me. Langston had tried to make me disappear. Instead, he turned me into a headline. Instead, he made me a major news story. By 6:02 p.m., boardroom was in full cardiac arrest. By 6:02 p.m., the boardroom was in a state of chaos. Someone leaked the memo, his memo, to 3 journalists and 1-day activist with 500,000 Twitter followers and 0 chill. Someone leaked his memo to 3 journalists and an equity and inclusion activist with a huge following on Twitter. The post read, "Breaking, chairman of $400 meters firm says female hires are inflationary deadweight." The activist's post read, "Breaking, chairman of $400 million firm says female hires are a financial burden." In other news, their top female exec just closed a 120 meters acquisition while under HR suspension. In other news, the post continued, their top female executive just closed a $120 million acquisition while suspended by HR. Stay tuned. 20 minutes later, firm's LinkedIn page turned into a war zone. 20 minutes later, the company's LinkedIn page had become a digital battlefield. Every comment section was a dumpster fire of corporate apologies, women sharing horror stories, and recruiters circling like sharks in a Red Cross pool. The comments were a mess of corporate apologies, women sharing their own negative experiences, and recruiters circling like sharks. Someone dug up Langston's country club profile and found out he donated to an anti-women in STEM lobbying group. Someone found Langston's country club profile and discovered he had donated to a group that was against women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. His Wikipedia page quietly disappeared overnight. His Wikipedia page was silently removed overnight. Meanwhile, I was technically still suspended, sipping boxed wine in my sweatpants with my laptop propped on a laundry basket. Meanwhile, I was still technically suspended, drinking boxed wine and using my laptop, which was propped up on a laundry basket. I hadn't showered in 36 hours. But I'd never felt more powerful because even as they tried to ghost me from the system, they couldn't stop the noise. I hadn't showered in 36 hours, but I felt more powerful than ever. Because even as they tried to erase me from the company, they couldn't silence the public outrage. The boards couldn't ignore it anymore. The board could no longer ignore the situation. At 午後7時18分 IGOTA プライベート Zoom インバイト At 7:18 p.m. I received a private Zoom meeting invitation. Subject: Michelle Board Session Confidential. The subject line was Michelle Board Session Confidential. No explanation, just a time. And a link. There was no explanation, just the time and a link to join. I joined, still in a hoodie, one AirPod in, and a frozen Trader Joe's tamale on my lap. I joined the call, still wearing a hoodie, with one AirPod in my ear and a frozen tamale on my lap. 8 squares appeared on screen. Stone-faced, tight-lipped, nervous in that way rich men get when the brand might suffer. 8 men appeared on the screen, their expressions unreadable, their mouths tense, and they were all nervous in a way that wealthy men get when their company's reputation is at risk. Chairman Wexler, the old money patriarch who once congratulated me for speaking so clearly, leaned in to frame like he was inspecting roadkill. Chairman Wexler, a man from an old wealthy family who had once complimented me for speaking clearly, leaned into the camera as if he were examining something disgusting. Michelle, he said, this has escalated quickly. Miche, he said, this situation has gotten out of hand very fast. I said nothing. I didn't say a word. Let the silence ferment. I let the silence hang in the air and get more uncomfortable. Another board member, one I hadn't seen in months, jumped in. Another board member, whom I hadn't seen in months, quickly spoke up. There's some concern that you may have overstepped. There's some concern that you might have gone too far, that your handling of the Ravik deal violated internal protocols, and that your handling of the Ravik deal broke our internal rules. Oh, I said, biting into the tamale? Oh, I said, taking a bite of my tamale. You mean like Langston's protocol where he rewrites job descriptions to phase women out of commission structures? Do you mean like Langston's rule where he changes job descriptions to prevent women from getting commission? Or the one where he sends HR after whistleblowers? Or the one where he sends HR to go after people who report wrongdoing? Awkward pause. There was an awkward silence. Wexler cleared his throat. We're not here to litigate Mr. Langston's leadership style. We're not here to discuss Mr. Langston's management style. We're here to determine whether your actions cut him off. We're here to decide if your actions have severed ties with him. My actions just added $120 million to your Q3 valuation. My actions just added $120 million to your company's value for the third quarter. On record, signed, banked, while your leadership style tried to erase the woman who did it. A signed deal that's on record, while your leadership style tried to erase the woman who made it happen. A third board member, younger, finally spoke. A younger board member finally spoke. And what do you want, Michelle? And what do you want, Michelle? I didn't even blink. I want Langston's resignation before market open. I want Langston's public and notarized resignation before the market opens tomorrow. Public, signed, and notarized. I want it to be public and formally documented. I want a formal reversal of my suspension. I want my suspension to be officially reversed. Want full credit for the acquisition in the investor call next week. And I want the original No Women in Sales memo to be included in the corporate history archive attached to my personnel file with my name listed as the reason it no longer applies. I want full credit for the acquisition during the investor call next week. And I want the original No Women in Sales memo to be permanently stored in the company's records, with my name listed as the reason it is no longer valid. The silence this time wasn't awkward. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was funeral level quiet. It was the kind of silence you'd find at a funeral. Wexler sighed through his nose. Wexler sighed heavily through his nose. That's aggressive. That's a very forceful request. No, I said, standing slowly. No, I said, slowly standing up. That it's clinical, and if you don't do it, next woman you suspend might be testifying in a Senate labor hearing with screenshots. It's a business decision. And if you don't do it, the next woman you suspend might be giving testimony at a Senate labor hearing with screenshots of everything. Click, click. I left the meeting. I ended the call. An hour later, a staff-wide email hid in boxers. An hour later, an email was sent to all employees. Langston had chosen to pursue new opportunities. Langston had decided to pursue other opportunities. My suspension was reversed. My suspension was canceled. My access restored. My access to company systems was restored. My name, full name, was listed in a press release alongside the Ravik deal as lead strategic architect. A press release was issued that named me as the lead strategic architect for the Ravik deal, but I wasn't done because there was one more person who hadn't said a damn word through this whole thing. But I wasn't finished because there was still one more person who hadn't spoken up throughout this whole ordeal. Langston's golden boy, the heir in waiting, his son, Bryce Langston, VP of Global Sales, who just happened to be listed on Denny's leaked cap table as a silent partner in Biogen, the company we beat to the Ravik's punch. That person was Langston's privileged son, Bryce Langston, the VP of Global Sales, who, according to a leaked document, was a secret partner in the company we had outmaneuvered to get the Ravik deal. And that was about to get real interesting. And that was about to get very interesting. Bryce Langston wore loafers without socks and used synergy in casual conversation. Bryce Langston wore loafers without socks and used corporate jargon like synergy in everyday conversation. He was the kind of guy who called waiters boss and thought female ambition was just unresolved daddy issues. He was the type of person who called waiters boss and believed that women's professional ambition was just a form of daddy issues. Board saw him as legacy, groomed to take over when his father finally kelled over mid-ran about remote work. The board saw him as the heir apparent, someone who was being prepared to take over for his father. But I knew better because when the Ravik deal hit the wires, Bryce didn't call to congratulate me. But I knew something was wrong because when the Ravik deal was announced, Bryce didn't call to congratulate me. He didn't email it, didn't even like the press post. He didn't email me or even like the press release on social media. Instead, he went silent. Instead, he was completely silent. And silence from a Langston, that's a blood trail. And for someone with the last name Langston, silence meant something was wrong. So I started digging. I started investigating. It didn't take long. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. One of the junior analysts from finance owed me a favor. A junior analyst from the finance department owed me a favor. Once coached her through a panic attack after Langston Sr. told her she dressed to West Coast. I had once helped her through a panic attack after Langston Sr. told her she was dressed to West Coast. I asked her to cross-reference all outgoing deal queries from Bryce's office over the last 90 days. I asked her to cross-reference all of the deal-related inquiries that had been sent from Bryce's office over the past 90 days. Dashi sent me a spreadsheet that nearly set my laptop on fire. She sent me a spreadsheet so full of information that it felt like it would overheat my laptop. Turns out Bryce had been feeding select intel to Biogen for weeks. It turned out that Bryce had been sharing classified information with Biogen for weeks. Confidential projections, market positioning, even Redland IP descriptions of Ravix's molecule pipeline. He had been giving them confidential projections, market positioning strategies, and even detailed descriptions of Ravix's molecules and intellectual property.fo he shouldn't have had, information he shouldn't have had access to. Cross-T'd the timestamp. I cross-referenced the timestamps. They aligned perfectly with Biogen's mysterious 11th hour offers. They matched perfectly with the strange last-minute offers that Biogen had made. They've been countering every move Danny and I made, like they had a goddamn blueprint, because they did. Biogen had been able to counter every single move Danny and I made as if they had a master plan, because they did. Bryce gave it to them. Bryce had provided them with the plan, and now the little trust fund tapeworm was trying to cover his tracks by praising the Ravix acquisition in company-wide emails, as if he'd been in the war room, as if he wasn't actively trying to knife the deal before it happened. And now, the privileged Leach was trying to cover his tracks by praising the Ravik acquisition in company-wide emails, acting as if he had been part of the negotiations when he had actually been actively trying to sabotage the deal. Printed out the spreadsheet, highlighted every damning times. I printed out this spreadsheet and highlighted every single incriminating timestamp. Cross cross-referenced it with the internal audit trail. I cross-referenced the spreadsheet with the internal audit trail. Then I requested a private meeting with Danny Patel. Then I asked to meet with Danny Patel in private. She took it over Zoom. We met over a Zoom call. No makeup, just fury and a black turtleneck. Her war uniform. She wore no makeup, just a black turtleneck. Her unofficial uniform of intense seriousness. Talk to me, she said. Tell me what's going on, she said. I showed her everything. Walked her through the data. I showed her all the evidence and explained the data to her. At the end, I sent her a file with an innocuous name. At the end of the meeting, I sent her a file with a harmless sounding name. Langston overlap V3XLSX. The file was named Langston overlap V3XLSX. She opened it, went silent, said, I'm going to feed this to our lawyers and Biogen's ethics counsel. She opened the file, went silent for a moment, and then said, I'm going to give this to our lawyers and to Biogen's ethics counsel. I blinked. Biogen. I blinked in surprise. I asked. She nodded. They're in acquisition talks with us now. Merging the IP, she nodded. They're in talks to acquire us now, merging the intellectual property. Bryce just nuked his bargaining power by committing corporate Bryce just completely destroyed his negotiation position by committing corporate So she smiled, cold, unapologetic. So we're going to feed him to the wolves. She gave a cold, unapologetic smile and said, so we're going to throw him to the wolves. The next day, I slid a copy of the same file into an envelope. The next day, I put a copy of the same file into an envelope. No return address. There was no return address on the envelope, no signature. There was no signature. Just one line on the sticky note. There was only one line on the sticky note. Check the IP logs. Checked the IP logs. You're being played by your prince. Your heir is betraying you. I had it couriered directly to Wexler's personal assistant. I had it delivered directly to Wexler's personal assistant at 10:42 a.m. Bryce Langston's calendar auto removed him from every executive level standing meeting at 10:42 a.m. Bryce Langston was automatically removed from all of the executive level meetings on his calendar by 12:16 p.m. His LinkedIn changed to open to work, but he didn't go quietly. By 12:16 p.m., his LinkedIn profile was updated to open to work, but he didn't leave without a fight. No, Bryce sent me a text. Just one sentence. It was just one sentence. You just ended my career. I stared at it. I stared at the text. It marinates. Then typed back. No, you ended it the second you bet against me. I let it sit for a moment before I replied. No. You ended it the moment you decided to bet against me. His read receipt popped and then nothing. His read receipt appeared and then there was nothing more. Meanwhile, Langston Sr., the man who once said inclusivity is a fad, was officially in talks to divest from the company he founded. Meanwhile, Langston Sr., the man who once called inclusivity a fad, was officially in talks to leave the company he had started. Was calling it reputation-driven transition planning. HR was calling it reputation-driven transition planning. I called it karma with a 401k. I called it justice that came with a retirement plan. By Thursday, my office was moved upstairs, corner view, keycard access, a title no woman had ever held before, Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, and literally stapled to the framed copy of the Ravix contract on my wall. Langston's original memo. By Thursday, I had a new office upstairs with a corner view and keycard access, and a new title no woman had ever held before. Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, No Women in Sales. Signed, dated, pierced straight through the heart with a titanium staple. Langston's original No Women in Sales memo was literally stapled to the framed copy of the Ravik contract on my wall. Pierced through the heart with a titanium staple, but it wasn't over, because now I had a seat at the table and I knew exactly whose chairs needed removing next. But my work wasn't done, because now I had a position of power and I knew exactly who else needed to be removed. The promotion was quiet. The promotion was low dash key dot no champagne, opaque, no awkward applause from people who used to look through me like I was glassed with Wi-Fi. There was no champagne, no awkward applause from people who used to treat me like I was invisible. Just a new badge, a new floor, and a new war. It was just a new badge, a new floor, and a new battle to fight. Because the board didn't promote me out of admiration. The board didn't promote me because they admired me. They did it out of fear. They did it because they were afraid. Fear of another leak. They were afraid of another leak. Fear of headlines. They were afraid of more negative press. Fear that the next woman might come for their seat with better receipts. They were afraid that the next woman would come for their jobs with even more incriminating evidence. So they gave me a title. What they didn't realize was I didn't want their table. What they didn't realize was that I didn't want to just sit at their table. I wanted to rebuild the damn building. I wanted to rebuild the entire company from the ground up. First order of business, clean house. My first priority was to get rid of the dead weight. Bryce was already in corporate exile, licking his wounds somewhere in Miami with a suitcase full of unpaid bar tabs and completo close. Bryce was already in corporate exile, nursing his wounds in Miami with a suitcase full of unpaid bar tabs and non-compete agreements. But he'd left behind a nest of Langston loyalists, middle managers, all male, all mediocre, clinging to their titles like life vests on a sinking ship. But he had left behind a group of Langston loyalists, all male, mediocre middle managers who were clinging to their titles like life jackets on a sinking ship. I started with Todd. Todd oversaw enterprise sales, but hadn't closed a deal since the Obama administration. Todd was in charge of enterprise sales, but he hadn't closed a deal since the Obama administration. Spent most of his time forwarding memes and taking credit for his team's wins. He spent most of his time forwarding memes and taking credit for his team's successes. The kind of guy who said, let's circle back and touch base like it was a religion. He was the kind of person who used corporate jargon, like let's circle back and touch base all the time. I called him into my new office. Glass walls, custom espresso machine framed, quote, behind me. The office had glass walls, a custom espresso machine, and a framed, quote, behind me. Don't tell me what you deserve. Show me what you built. The quote said, "Don't tell me what you deserve. Show me what you built." "Todd," I said, motioning to the chair. "Todd," I said, gesturing to the chair, "we need to talk about your pipeline." "We need to talk about your sales pipeline." He smirked, like a man who thought I was about to ask for his advice. He smirked, assuming I was about to ask for his advice. "Course, Michelle, look, I know you're settling into the new role, but enterprise deals take time." "Of course, Michelle," he said, "I know you're still getting used to your new role, but enterprise deals take time. You don't just walk in," and I slid a folder across the desk. "You don't just walk in," and I cut him off by sliding a folder across the desk. Inside 3 months of CRM logs, email transcripts, and one damning audit that showed Todd had reassigned cold leads to junior staff, but claimed their closes as his own. Inside the folder were 3 months of CRM logs, email transcripts, and an audit that showed Todd had given new leads to junior staff and then taken credit for their sales. I'd highlighted every line in pink, like a gift. I had highlighted every line in pink, as if I were giving him a present. "Todd," I said, "you haven't sold anything." "Todd," I said, "you haven't actually sold anything. Just been rerouting wins like a glorified mailman. You've just been redirecting successes like a highly paid mailman." He pulled his face, went pale. This is being taken out of context. This is ... This is being taken out of context. He STAMMERED. "No, Todd," I said calmly. "No, Todd," I said calmly. "This is your context in print with this is your reality in print with timestamps." He tried to pivot. "Look, Michelle, I've always supported women in leadership." I held up a hand. He tried to change the subject, saying, "Look, Michelle, I've always supported women in leadership." I held up my hand to stop him. "Your severance package is already with legal. Your severance package is already with the legal team. You can pick it up before noon. You can go pick it up before noon." He stood flustered, face blotchy with panic. He stood up in a panic, his face blotchy. "You can't just erase me. You can't just get rid of me," he said. I smiled. "Todd, erased yourself." "I'm just filing the paperwork," I smiled. "Todd," I said, "you got rid of yourself?" "I'm just filing the paperwork." He left in silence. He left without another word. Over the next week, I called in 6 more pillars of sales leadership. Over the next week, I met with 6 more key members of the sales leadership team. All men, all coasting on fumes and entitlement, all gone before the printer finished their exit memos. They were all men who were just getting by on their sense of entitlement, and they were all gone before their exit paperwork was finished printing. The office buzz changed. The atmosphere in the office changed. Women started holding eye contact longer. Women started making eye contact for longer periods of time. The younger ones stopped whispering in hallways. The younger employees stopped whispering in the hallways. One intern left a post-it on my desk that said, "Thank you for proving we weren't crazy." One intern left a sticky note on my desk that said, "Thank you for showing us that we weren't just imagining things." There was still one piece left, Langston. There was still one piece of the puzzle left. Langston, the board claimed, He'd retired, but I knew he was still lingering in the shadows, burning up burner phones, whispering to old money contacts, angling for comeback. The board said he had retired, but I knew he was still working behind the scenes, using temporary phones, talking to his wealthy contacts, and trying to make a comeback. Men like Langston don't go gentle, they go venomous. Men like Langston don't go out quietly, they become vindictive. So I made a call to Danny, so I called Danny. We met again, same bar by the wharf. We met again at the same bar by the wharf. This time I wore the same lipstick I had the day he handed me the memo. This time I wore the same lipstick I had on the day he gave me the memo. You sure about this? Danny asked, sipping her scotch neat. Are you sure about this? Danny asked, taking a sip of her straight scotch. Want it airtight? I want his network scorched. Do you want it to be foolproof? I want to completely destroy his network. No soft landings, no second acts, no soft landing, no second chance. She raised her glass. Then we'll do it my way. She raised her glass. Then we'll do it my way, she said. By Friday. New PR firm run by an ex-journalist Danny used to date released a full-length feature in Forbes Women headline. By Friday, Ravik's new public relations firm, run by a former journalist Danny had dated, released a full-length article in Forbes Women, how one female exec outsold the boy club and reshaped a $400M firm. The headline was, how one female executive outsold the boys club and reshaped a $400 million firm. My face, my story, the memo framed, and the closing paragraph. The article featured my face, my story, a framed version of the memo, and a final, powerful paragraph. Dagger, the final paragraph, was a sharp blow. When asked what she would say to the man who once told her, women don't close deals, Michelle simply smiled and stapled his memo to the signed $120 million contract she led. The article ended by saying that when asked what she would say to the man who once told her that women don't close deals, Michelle simply smiled and stapled his memo to the signed $120 million contract that she had spearheaded. Langston didn't respond publicly. Langston did not make a public response, but I heard through legal back channels that he'd been dropped from 3 advisory boards, lost 2 pending investments, and had a speaking gig canceled mid-flight. But I heard through legal contacts that he had been removed from 3 advisory boards, lost 2 pending investments, and had a speaking engagement canceled while he was on his way there. Perfect. But I wasn't done yet, because there was one final humiliation I'd been saving, and it was going to happen on camera. But I wasn't done yet, because I had one final humiliation planned for him, and it was going to happen on camera. It was the quarterly investor call. It was the quarterly investor conference call. Live webcast, cameras on, suits polished, scripts tight. It was a live webcast with cameras on, everyone in their best suits, and a tightly controlled script. Langston was never supposed to be part of it. Langston was not supposed to be part of the call. Not anymore. Not anymore. But like mold in a flooded basement, he found a way to fester back into the agenda under the guise of legacy recognition. But like mold in a flooded basement, he had managed to get himself back onto the agenda under the guise of being recognized for his legacy. Wexler, ever the coward, had agreed to let him give a farewell statement. Wexler, who was a coward, had agreed to let him give a farewell statement. Said it would calm old shareholders, that it would help us close the chapter with grace. He said it would calm old investors and help the company close the chapter with Grace. Langston wouldn't know Grace if it stapled him to a contract and dragged him through a feminist tea talk. Langston wouldn't know Grace if it was stapled to a contract and put in front of him at a feminist head. Talk da. So I let them invite him. Let them think he had the final word. I let them believe he would have the final say. And then I rewrote the script. For the call. The webcast opened as usual. Wexler obliviating about strong quarters and emerging opportunities. The webcast began, as it normally did, with Wexler droning on about good quarterly results and new opportunities. Investors nodded, some clapped, and then at the 22-minute mark, Wexler paused, cleared his throat, said, "And now, a few words from our former chairman who helped build the foundation of Actually I Cut In Steppin' Forward." Investors nodded and clapped, and at the 22-minute mark, Wexler stopped, cleared his throat, and said, "And now, a few words from our former chairman who helped build the foundation of..." I interrupted him, stepping forward. The cameras swung to me. The cameras turned to focus on me. Wexler blinked in surprise. "Michelle, he said. I took the mic, got calm/steady, dressed in slate gray, hair sharp enough to cut wire. I took the microphone, feeling calm and steady, dressed in a sharp gray suit with my hair styled to perfection.